This Halloween, we are leaving the fiction behind. You are about to hear 3 stories, 3 documented, bone-chilling tales rooted not in make-believe, but in sickening reality. We're diving deep into the true accounts of the uncanny, the unexplained, and the genuinely gruesome. Welcome to 3 true Halloween horror stories. We won't start slow. We start with the most shocking reality. The night a terrifying Halloween decoration turned out to be something much, much worse. The year was 1976. The air in Long Beach, California was cold, thick, and smelled of salt and fog. Outside a rundown carnival attraction called the Laugh in the Dark funhouse, a film crew was setting up. They were shooting a scene for the TV series, The $6 Million Man. Among the dust-covered attractions and grotesque ghouls, there was one prop that caught everyone's eye. It was a man, slumped over, tied in a noose. A perfect, gruesome detail for a horror scene. It was so realistic that the crew decided to use it in their shot. But something about this particular mannequin was deeply unsettling. It didn't look like plaster or plastic. It looked leathery. The special effects coordinator, a man used to handling fake bodies, walked over to adjust the prop's hanging position. When he grabbed the arm to steady it, the crew watched in horror as the arm snapped clean off at the shoulder, and inside the break, not sawdust, not foam, not wiring, they saw bone, and they saw dark, dried muscle tissue. The terrifying truth hit them instantly. The crew was not filming around a prop. They had just broken the arm off a perfectly preserved human corpse. The police were called immediately. Their discovery launched one of the most bizarre and morbid investigations in American history. This wasn't a modern victim. This was a man who had been dead for over 60 years. The funhouse prop was identified as the mummified remains of a small-time outlaw named Elmer McCurdy. McCurdy was killed in 1911 during a shootout after a botched train robbery in Oklahoma. The local mortician, hoping to capitalize on the strange celebrity, embalmed the body using an experimental, arsenic-based formula that essentially leathered his skin and preserved him perfectly. For the next 6 decades, McCurdy's corpse became a traveling sideshow often sold for the price of a beer, displayed in carnivals across the country, and billed variously as the bandit who wouldn't give up and the man who defied death. The horror is not just the discovery. The horror lies in the fact that for years, this real dead man was hauled around, gawked at, and eventually left hanging in the dark of a funhouse. Think about the thousands of carnival goers who had laughed, poked, or brushed past him, assuming he was just a tacky Halloween toy. In 1976, after the shocking discovery, authorities used dental records to finally confirm his identity. Elmer McCurdy was finally, mercifully, laid to rest. He was buried in a ceremony where concrete was poured over his casket, ensuring that this true Halloween horror story, the story of a corpse mistaken for a decoration, could never be revived. The chilling reality of McCurdy shows us that sometimes, the true horror is simply the failure to see what's right in front of you. But what happens when the horror is invisible? When the truth is hidden in a simple piece of furniture? We move now from the grotesque reality of the carnival to the unsettling domestic terror of the chair that moved itself. Now, we turn to the documented case of a haunting that wasn't a mistake, but a relentless escalating attack. This is the story of the Hodgson family and the poltergeist of Enfield, North London. A case studied by dozens of investigators, police officers, and reporters. It began, as these things often do, with something small. The year was 1977. The Hodgson house was a typical 2-story council home. Inside lived a single mother, Peggy, and her 4 children. Their life was ordinary until the warm night of August 30th. It started with a simple, persistent knocking sound coming from the walls of the children's room. Peggy, the mother, dismissed it as pipes, or perhaps neighbors playing a prank. But the next night, the sounds were louder, heavier, and moved throughout the house. Then, the phenomena got physical. Janet, the 11-year-old daughter, ran screaming from her room. She claimed her bed was shaking and violently scraping across the floor. When Peggy ran in, she tried to push the bed back, but claimed it was impossibly heavy. Terrified, Peggy finally called the police. 2 officers arrived that night. And it was here, in the heart of this ordinary home, that the story became undeniable fact. One of the officers, Jim Temple, walked into the living room. Before his eyes, a heavy antique armchair suddenly lifted and slid 6 inches across the floor on its own. It was too fast, too controlled, to be mistaken for anything else. The officers later filed a formal report, stating they had witnessed a chair move inexplicably. The event opened a floodgate. The attacks escalated from shaking beds to flying marbles, thrown Lego bricks, and doors slamming shut violently. The entity seemed focused on the children, particularly Janet. She was often found suspended in the air or contorted in strange positions. Then came the audio evidence. Investigators set up recording equipment and captured something horrific. A guttural, gravelly male voice, speaking through Janet. The voice claimed to be the spirit of Bill, a man who died in the house decades earlier. The most disturbing revelation came when Bill described his death. The voice stated with chilling clarity that he had died in the living room of a brain hemorrhage, slumped in his armchair. This was the dark truth behind the house. It wasn't just haunted. It was the site of a brutal, painful, and sudden death. The kind entity that had seemingly just been playing with the children's beds was actually the angry, restless spirit of a dead man. The haunting wasn't some generic ghost. It was tied to the very furniture and floors of that house. A piece of the horror was left behind, stubbornly attached to the chair where Bill took his last gasping breath. The Enfield Poltergeist remains one of the most highly documented paranormal cases in history, largely due to that one police report confirming the object that moved itself. It is a terrifying reminder that some spirits are determined to occupy their space long after they're gone. From the grotesque surprise of the funhouse to the domestic siege of the moving chair, we have one final, deeply unsettling story. We've faced the undeniable truth of a human relic mistaken for a prop, and the relentless, documented terror of an object moving on its own. For our final true horror story, we ask, what happens when you are most alone, far from home, in a room you can't escape? This is the true story of the haunted hotel room, a place so saturated with profound sadness and despair that the walls themselves become a witness to terror. Hotel rooms are places of anonymity. You check in, you use the key card, and you assume the space is clean, temporary, and safe. But for those who stay in the specific, notorious rooms of certain old hotels, that anonymity often hides a profoundly dark history. Imagine checking into a quiet, respectable old hotel. The desk clerk is polite. The atmosphere is heavy with the quiet history of the city. You get your key to a room number that has become infamous in its own right. Our narrator, a business traveler, let's call him James, checked in late. He was tired, but the room immediately felt unnaturally cold, colder than the outside air. The lights seemed dimmer, no matter what he did. He shook it off as a faulty thermostat and jet lag. He finally fell asleep, only to be jolted awake hours later by the unmistakable sound of a child's distressed voice coming from somewhere nearby. He pressed his ear to the walls, checking the bathroom, but the room was silent. But the phenomena grew worse. The simple keycard reader outside his door would often flash red and refuse to work, even with the valid key. Sometimes the TV would switch on by itself, displaying static with a blinding white light that filled the room. The final terrifying event happened on the 3rd night. James woke up, paralyzed with fear, sensing a definite presence in the room. He couldn't move, but his eyes were wide open, staring into the dark corner. He saw a figure, small and shadowy, standing unnaturally still. Not threatening, but deeply sorrowful. As his paralysis finally broke, the figure vanished, but a sharp metallic scratching sound scraped from the inside of the closet door. When he jumped up and ripped the door open, the closet was empty. Terrified, James checked out early the next morning. It wasn't until weeks later, when he was safely home, that he did a search on the specific hotel room number. He discovered the horrific truth. His room was notorious. Years ago, a mother, overwhelmed by grief and despair, had been involved in a devastating, tragic event in that very room. The child he heard crying, the sorrowful shadow he saw, these were not new events. They were a playback of the room's terrifying, indelible past. The horror of the haunted hotel room is the violation of a sanctuary. It's the chilling discovery that you are not alone, and the energy of that small, temporary space is desperately trying to pull you into its permanent, tragic despair. 3 true stories. 3 stark reminders that the darkest parts of reality are often far stranger and more frightening than fiction. From the unsettling discovery of a human relic, to the undeniable poltergeist of the moving chair, and finally, the profound sorrow trapped within the walls of a hotel room. We hope these stories have chilled you to the bone this Halloween season. If you made it this far, you survived all 3 true horror stories. Now do 2 things for us. First, please hit that like button to let us know these deep dives into true horror are what you want to see. Second, subscribe and turn on notifications. We investigate stories like these all year long. Finally, we have linked another video on screen right now, a terrifying list of 5 true unsolved disappearances that will keep the fear going. Click that video to see what the dark holds next. Thank you for watching, and remember, always check your room, always listen to the quiet, and never assume a prop is just a prop. Happy Halloween.